Well, welcome. We're back. This is MoveCongress.org, and we're in the office of Congressman Neil Abercrombie from the Armed Services Committee. And Neil, thanks for being with us.
Tom, we're colleagues.
Yes,
we were
indeed.
Classmates, right?
We were.
Back in 1990.
That's right.
Wonderful to see you. Aloha.
Aloha. First of all, your district. Who do you
Hawaii,
represent?
Right? Guess, right?
Aloha.
Hawaii, First District of Hawaii. It's the urban district, Waikiki, Pearl Harbor, out in Hawaii. 5,000-mile one-way commute.
Neil, you have obviously taken a leadership position. You're in a key position in the Armed Services Committee. You've taken a leadership position in trying to end this war. Why do you feel so strongly about the Iraq War?
First, on the key position, I'm the chair of the subcommittee on air and land. That's the Army and the Air Force. And, of course, that's a key element with regard to the war. The whole motivation behind me getting into electoral politics almost 4 decades ago was Vietnam. When I saw that military action was being used to mask political policy, policy that I disagreed with, and saw young men and women being sacrificed on the altar of a political agenda, an ideological agenda that I thought was against the interests of the United States and against world peace. It's the same thing now.
How can Congress stop the war in Iraq?
The most practical way we can deal with it in Congress is through the budgetary process and through bills that institute laws. We've moved to a kind of imperial presidency in which manifested in George W. Bush that indicates or has as its political ideology, its political foundation, the divine right of presidents, kind of executive imperialism. And the Congress, through the Constitution, is the entity, the institution that raises the armed forces and provides for the armed forces. We have to reassert congressional sovereignty, if you will, against the imperial president.
Okay, so people are trying to figure out this process. We're going to have a resolution on the Iraq War. We're going to have a supplemental appropriation that will come from the Appropriations Committee to the floor. And then there's the whole authorization. That's right. Where you come in. Could you tell us a little about that?
Let me give you the shorthand version of what happens from that constitutional imperative to defend the Constitution and raise and provide for the armed forces. Very simple. The Armed Services Committee authorizes what shall be spent and what the policies shall be with regard to the armed services, and the Appropriations Committee then puts the money behind those policies. If you work together, you meld them, you combine them, and that becomes the policy of the United States that the President is supposed to implement. That's what we're going to do. The supplemental budget that you mentioned is supposed to take place in an emergency. Obviously, you can't anticipate every contingency, so we provide for an emergency process for additional funds if they're necessary. What we're going to do here is authorize what the Defense Department should be doing and then provide appropriations. First, to a supplementary to take into account the expending that's been going on right now, and then what shall be spent in the 2008 period coming up, the fiscal years for 2008. So it's a three-step process. Includes one authorization and 2 appropriation activities. That will be coming up in the immediate future.
And the authorization is going to deal directly with Iraq.
That's how we deal with it. We start out with a resolution of intent indicating that we support the troops and want to end the war. That said, we move to the practical realities then of passing a budget and passing laws to sustain the policies associated with that budget to end the war in Iraq. And the fastest that we can do that probably takes us up to about October, when the fiscal year for 2008 actually starts for the federal government. Because we have to have hearings, we have to have transparency, we have to give people an opportunity to speak, to get their views over. For example, those who are tuning in, who are trying to figure out what we're going to do, we will, in a very compact period of time, between the time we're speaking now, about mid-February, and by the summer, finish our proposals, get it over to the Senate, get finished hopefully by September and get it on the president's desk. Then we'll see what he does. If he tries to veto it, we'll have to struggle in the House and Senate to overcome that veto. We need to challenge this president right now as fast as it's physically possible to do in this Congress on the Iraq War.
Neil, should we be worried about a U.S. attack on Iran?
Yes.
And what can Congress do about that?
We need to get ahead of the curve on this and make sure that we do not cede to an imperial president any notion that he has a unilateral capacity to attack anybody or any country, let alone Iran. But obviously, that's part of what's called the neoconservative ideology, what I call the 21st century version of imperialism. An imperial power, an empire, and they have had from the very beginning Iraq, Iran, and Syria as a kind of a tripod of objects for attack and control. And Iran is obviously next in this series. What we need is a diplomatic offensive, not a military offensive. We need to engage diplomatically with Syria, with Iran, and with throughout what we term the Middle East, in order to come to what I call a grand settlement of the issues that are out there. We need to put diplomacy first, and I think they're ready for it.
And what can Congress do to make sure that that happens and that there isn't a military attack on Iran?
We have to put the president on notice that he does not have sanction to do that, and that we'll need to put together a budget and policies in the Congress reasserting the role, the constitutional role required of the Congress, which obligates the Congress and obligates the President to understand that only the Congress can declare war. That's where the fundamental policy discussion has to be held, and I hope that this is going to be a principal argument in the 2008 presidential election. The reassertion of the proper role, the constitutional role of the Congress. Only the Congress can declare war. Not the President of the United States cannot do it unilaterally. That needs to be decided in the 2008 presidential elections.
Neil, last question. People who are tuning into our website, MoveCongress.org, they want to move Congress. What is the most important message that they could be giving their member of Congress?
That they want this war to end, that they want Congress to reassert its historic role, its constitutional obligation to not only declare war, but to give direction as to what should be done with the defense policy of this country, not to cede it to an imperial president. They need to make sure that their member of Congress knows that that's what their views are, and that their member of Congress is going to be held accountable to that.